We already divided everything. My Aunt Saeed. Then the lawyer said my name was the only one in the will. The room went dead silent. My aunt's face went white, and the lawyer just kept staring at the paper like he couldn't believe it either. My name is Vivian Hartwell. I'm 29 years old. And 3 months ago, I found out I'd been deliberately left off the guest list for my own grandmother's will reading. I only found out it was happening because my cousin texted the wrong group chat by mistake. I showed up anyway. We already divided everything. My Aunt Carol announced the second she saw me walk in. Arms crossed. Chin high. You weren't invited for a reason. The lawyer frowned and looked down at his folder. Actually, he said slowly, her name is the only one in this will. Nobody breathed for a full 10 seconds. If you've ever been the one family member who actually showed up while everyone else showed up for the inheritance, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because this story is about to get messy in the best possible way. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, the daughter of my grandmother's youngest son, a man named Daniel Hartwell. My dad walked away from the family's real estate empire to become a middle school science teacher, which my grandfather's side of the family never quite forgave him for. My mom, Renee, was a hospital social worker. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And every single Sunday, without fail, we drove out to my grandmother Josephine's house on Sullivan's Island, a rambling old beach house with a wraparound porch that had been in the family for 3 generations. When I was 11, my dad died in a car accident. My mom held it together as best she could, working double shifts. But it was Grandma Josephine who quietly stepped in and became the steady ground under my feet. Vivian's staying with me on weekends, she told the family, in a tone that didn't invite discussion. For the next 7 years, I split my time between my mom's small apartment and Grandma's porch. And it was there, shelling butter beans and listening to her stories, that I really got to know her. She wasn't the type of wealthy widow you'd expect. She wore the same 3 cardigans in rotation, volunteered at the food bank every Thursday, and treated her housekeeper like family. The beach house was her one extravagance, not for show, just for the memories stitched into every creaky floorboard. My Aunt Carol and my Uncle Whit never understood her. They lived in gated communities 40 minutes inland, drove leased German cars, and spent every visit, gently or not so gently, pushing her to modernize her lifestyle, which really meant liquidating things. When I chose nursing school and later specialized in palliative care, my extended family treated it like a diagnosis. My Uncle Whit cornered me at a 4th of July cookout when I was 22. You could be running a division of the company by now, he said, swirling his drink. Your grandmother could make one call. Why are you wiping strangers' foreheads for 40 grand a year? Because I want to earn what's mine, I told him. My cousins Delaney and Beau, both raised on private school promises of inheritance, thought I was either lying or delusional. Delaney once asked me, completely serious, but don't you want to actually be somebody? I already was somebody. I just wasn't rich yet. And to them, that was the same thing as invisible. As Grandma Josephine moved into her 80s, her health started slipping, first her hips, then her heart. I started visiting twice a week, bringing groceries, sorting her pillbox, sitting with her while she told me stories about her own mother, one of the first Black women to run a business on that stretch of coast. Back when that alone could get you burned out of your home. Money doesn't tell you who a person is. Vivian, she told me once, snapping green beans on the porch. Watch what they do when they think there's nothing left to gain. That's the whole truth of a person, right there. Meanwhile, my Uncle Whit visited once a month, mostly to inspect the property values around her. My Aunt Carol dropped off expensive gift baskets and left within the hour. My cousins showed up for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Full stop. 3 years before she passed, Uncle Whit called a family meeting at the beach house, and I walked in to find a real estate agent already sitting in the living room. "We're listing the island house," he announced. "It's a money pit sitting empty most of the year." I looked at Grandma. Her jaw was tight, but her voice was calm. I never agreed to that. The agent left in a hurry. That night, in the kitchen, Uncle Whit told me quietly, "You think you're special to her. You're not. Don't push your luck. Vivian, remember who actually built this family's money, and it wasn't your father." That comment never left me. From then on, the whispers started that I was positioning myself, that I was working an angle on a sick old woman. By the next Christmas, I was quietly dropped from the family photo. My aunt started scheduling my visits to 2 hours on Sundays, always with someone coincidentally stopping by to supervise. The Christmas before she died, I wasn't invited to the family gathering at all, keeping it small this year. My aunt texted. I later learned small meant everyone but me. I dropped off a batch of Grandma's favorite pecan pralines with her caregiver instead, along with a photo album of summers on the island. That was the last gift I ever gave her. When she passed that February, I didn't hear it from family. Her caregiver, a woman named Odessa, who'd become a true friend, called me in tears. By the time I got there, Aunt Carol and Uncle Whit were already talking to the funeral home. "Oh, Vivian," Aunt Carol said. "All sugar. We were just about to call you." At the funeral, I was seated 4 rows back, behind people who'd seen my grandmother twice in a decade. I wasn't asked to say a word. 2 weeks later, I got a text meant for someone else. My cousin Delaney. Forwarding to the wrong thread times. Reading is tomorrow. IKIP. Dad's lawyer's office. Mom says, "Do not tell Vivian." A second text followed almost instantly, times sorry wrong chat. In your. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. Part 3. The reading. I decided to go anyway. I put on the navy dress Grandma always said made me look like I meant business. And I drove to the lawyer's office with my hands shaking on the wheel. When the elevator doors opened, they were all there, Uncle Whit, Aunt Carol, Delaney, Bill, a scattering of relatives who barely knew my grandmother's middle name. Aunt Carol spotted me first. Her face rearranged itself into a tight smile. Vivian, what are you doing here? I'm here for Grandma's will reading." "You weren't invited," Uncle Whit said, stepping in front of me. "This is for family. I am family." That's when the office door opened, and an older man with silver hair introduced himself as Mr. Ainsley, my grandmother's attorney of over 25 years. "Are we missing anyone?" he asked, scanning the room. His eyes landed on me. "Vivian Hartwell." "Yes." "Good. You're required to be here." We filed into the conference room. Before Mr. Ainsley could open his folder, Aunt Carol jumped in. "Mr. Ainsley. I should explain, we already divided everything among the family. Informally, Vivian wasn't invited today because, frankly, we didn't want to waste your time." "Mr. Ainsley looked up slowly. "Nothing has been distributed. Nothing was ever meant to be distributed without this reading." He looked directly at me. "And as for Ms. Hartwell not being invited, that would be extremely irregular, given the contents of this will." "What does that mean?" Uncle Whit demanded. Mr. Ainsley adjusted his glasses. "It means her name is the only one in the will." The room went completely silent. "That has to be a mistake," Uncle Whit said. "I assure you it isn't." He read the will aloud. "My grandmother, Josephine Odell Hartwell, of sound mind, left the island house. Every account, every investment, and every possession to me. Not a portion. All of it." My aunt started crying. My cousin Delaney knocked over a glass of water, and nobody moved to clean it up. Uncle Whit was already on the phone with his own attorney before we left the building. Mr. Ainsley handed me a sealed envelope. Your grandmother asked me to give this to you privately. I read it right there in the parking lot. She wrote that she'd spent years quietly testing the family, mentioning valuable items to different relatives just to watch who asked about her health versus who asked about her assets. She wrote that I was the only one who never once failed. What followed wasn't quiet. Uncle Whit filed a lawsuit contesting the will, claiming undue influence. Aunt Carol started calling the hospice where I worked, hinting to my supervisor that I'd neglected patients to manipulate a dying woman. My cousin Delaney posted vague, biting things online about people who fake caring for money. My phone filled up with voicemails I stopped listening to. I went to the island house alone one afternoon, using the key I'd had for years. It was hollowed out. The antique clock from the hallway gone. Her jewelry box nearly empty. Even her handwritten recipe box was missing. It wasn't about the value. It was the erasing of her. In the back of her closet, I found a small safe. Inside was a leather journal, several flash drives, and a note times for Vivian. If it comes to this, she documented everything: dates, visits, missing items, even installed cameras 2 years before her death. One entry read times: Whit visited today. 10 minutes asking how I felt. 45 minutes explaining why I should sell the island house. He has never once understood the difference between a price and a worth. There were video recordings, 217 of them. Her attorney present in each, stating her name, the date, and her reasoning. Clear-eyed and steady, addressing exactly the accusations she knew were coming. I brought everything to my new attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Renata Cole. She watched maybe 4 minutes of the first video before she looked up and said, "Your grandmother didn't leave you an inheritance, Vivian. She left you an airtight case." We filed a formal inventory of everything missing, appraised total just under $180,000, and gave the family 7 days to return it before criminal theft charges were filed. We also had records of caretaking expenses Aunt Carol had quietly charged to Grandma's accounts for years, and loans Uncle Whit had never repaid. At the follow-up meeting, Renata played the first video for the room. I watched my aunt's hand fly to her mouth. I watched my uncle's face lose every ounce of color. By the end of the week, items started arriving back at the island house. No notes, no apologies. Delivered by moving trucks instead of hands. Uncle Whit dropped the lawsuit 2 days later. My aunt called me, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "We didn't understand why she preferred you," she admitted. "You never asked." I told her. I saw her as a person, not a balance sheet. I offered each relative one sentimental item, not the valuable pieces, just things that meant something. Some refused, still too proud. But Delaney asked for Grandma's recipe box. She taught me to make pralines once. It's one of the only good memories I have of her. My cousin Beau asked for our grandfather's old tackle box. Small things. Small doors. Cracked open. Months later, cleaning out her desk, I found one more letter. Tucked behind a drawer. My dearest Vivian, if you're reading this, the storm has passed. And knowing this family, it was probably a hurricane. I chose you not because you were perfect, but because when you made mistakes, you owned them. And when you loved me, you never once asked for anything back. Don't let this money change who you are. Use it. Take the trip to Ghana we always talked about. Fund that hospice program for people who have no one else. And someday, when the wounds are old enough, leave a door open for the rest of them, not because they've earned it, but because you were raised better than resentment. I love you, my girl. I always saw you clearly. Grandma Jo. I started the Josephine Hartwell Foundation that spring. funding hospice care for elderly people with no family left to advocate for them. I took the trip to Ghana. I kept the island house. And some nights I still sit on that porch and half expect to hear her voice telling me I've got flour on my nose. Uncle Whit has never spoken to me again. Some doors don't reopen, and I've made peace with that. But Delaney comes by sometimes now. With her daughter, a little girl she named Josephine. I want her to know the real stories. She told me. Not just the ones we tell at parties. My grandmother's photograph sits on the mantel. And some days, her small, knowing smile looks exactly like she planned the whole thing from the start. She probably did. Has your family ever shown you exactly who they were the moment money entered the picture? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this one meant something to you, subscribe. There's more where this came from. Because sometimes the real inheritance was never about the money at all. It's about the courage to stay yourself when everyone around you is asking you to be smaller. Thank you for sitting with me through this one.